Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And we had significant number of very interesting events. First of all, we'll probably start with the area with the Black Sea. The Ukrainians during the previous night made another attempt to cross the Black Sea and to attack Crimea. The Russians sent their air forces, probably Su-30 or Su-35, and as a result of a counter-attack the Ukrainian fleet ships were destroyed with the Marines on board. Now we are moving to Robotyne area, where currently we can see the heaviest clashes all over the combat line. The Ukrainians continue attacking, continue concentration and accumulation of their forces, but without any progress on the ground. The only difference that we can see that differs this day from the previous days is that the Ukrainians managed to bring some artillery systems for the combat line, and they tried to suppress the Russian artillery superiority in this area. And again, they can use just the HIMARS missiles against on the long distance range. And when talking about the short distance range and the medium distance range, the Ukrainians don't have normal weapon, or at least any superiority to counter attack and to destroy the Russian artillery systems. And mainly because of work of Russian anti-artillery systems that can discover the positions of Ukrainian forces, of Ukrainian artillery system. For example, in this video, we can see how the Ukrainians managed to discover one of these positions, and as a result of counter-artillery strike, probably the lonely counter-artillery strike during the previous week, the Ukrainians managed maybe to damage the Russian anti-artillery equipment. When talking about the entire progress of the Ukrainians, today we got more details and more confirmation that as a result of clashes on the north of Novoprokopov and the south of Robotyne, the Ukrainians did manage to establish control over the trenches. We remember that the Russians made few attempts to counterattack the Ukrainian positions in this direction, but yet the Russians haven't managed to force the Ukrainians to step back. So, as we understand, the Ukrainians digged in deeper and they controlled the northern trenches of Novoprokopovka. The Russian positions are on the south and the Ukrainian positions are on the north. But no matter the situation, no matter the progress in this area, another important thing is that since the beginning of the Ukrainian, let's say of September, we haven't received even a single confirmation of the Ukrainian positions in these fields. That means that the southwestern part of Verbovo was still under complete Russian control. The Ukrainians tried to bypass the Russian trenches and minefields along the main road in direction of Verbovo, but the Ukrainians had one big problem while all those attacks. And the thing is that all supply and support roads are under complete Russian fire control. There is not just the question whether the Ukrainians are able to capture Verbovo or Novoprokopovka. The only question, for example, I have is how many hours, minutes or days pass since the Ukrainian soldier enters the Bradley Square and he dies. Sometimes it's even seconds, sometimes it's minutes, sometimes it's maybe in hours, but very unfortunately very low chances that the Ukrainian soldier are able to survive there, like weeks or maybe a few days. On this video we can see another destroyed Ukrainian Challenger in the vicinity of the Bradley Square. The Ukrainians continue attempts, but now we see a small operational pause. Currently, the Ukrainians need to concentrate their forces before the next attempts to attack. Now we are moving to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead, probably the most important front line as of the 10th of September. The Ukrainians continue offensive operation in the vicinity of Novomayorska. As a result of clashes, as a result of assault, very bloody assault operation, the Ukrainians did manage to enter the northwestern part of the settlement. We have some geolocated confirmations of that, so we see the Ukrainian infantry running along the buildings, and after that the Russians were trying to attack and destroy those buildings that were captured by the Ukrainians. Anyway, this is an evidence, this is geolocated evidence. Currently the clashes for Novomayorska continues, but one more time, the same situation in Novomayorska as on the Bradley Square. No matter how many Ukrainians are sent there, this is not the question whether the Ukrainians are able to capture Novomayorska. The question we have is how many seconds, minutes, hours or days Ukrainian soldier can survive in this meat grinder, because there are also all road that leads to the settlements, to the combat line, under complete Russian fire and under complete Russian control. No matter how many forces Ukrainians can send, it doesn't matter. The matter is how many losses the Ukrainians will have due to capturing another stronghold or another forest or another tree in this area. On this video, we just saw the living road, not living road, but the road of death, a significant number of equipment that were destroyed during the previous attempt from the Ukrainian side to attack. The thing is that if we compare even the situation with the previous days, the Ukrainians don't have normal situation, don't have normal situation to make even rotation, even regular things like military rotation, they are forced to do under very heavy artillery fire. For example, even on this video, we see how the Ukrainian MRAP Pro arrived on the combat line, and just in a few seconds the Russians strike this car with artillery. So no chances to survive in this area, but I don't think that Ukrainian cares. The only thing they need is to capture and cross the river Shaitanka. There is a river Shaitanka that they need to cross and to create foothold, and this is exactly what the Ukrainians try currently to implement. But the Russians are very tricky. Yes, we see that from some perspective, maybe the Russians are forced to step back, or maybe they want to force the Ukrainians to think that they're retreating, or giving them opportunity to develop their offensive operation further. But meanwhile, on the western flank of the Mokry Yaly River, the Russians launched their own counter-offensive operation from Pryutine. And as a result of that attack, the Russians, some sources are saying that managed to capture some territories or recapture. I would say that the Russians managed to maintain the gap, to maintain the gray zone, and basically to reduce the distance between the edge Russian positions and the edge Ukrainian positions, which also means that probably within the next few days, if Ukrainians continue attacking in the direction of Novomayorsk, Novodonetsk on this side of Mokry Yaly River, the Russians will try to counterattack in the direction of Novodarivka, in direction of Rovnopol, and to try to restore this area. This is not the primary goal of the Russians, to restore control. The primary goal is to force the Ukrainians to send some reserves, some forces from the eastern flank to the western flank of Mokry Yaly, and to reduce the Ukrainians' possibilities in their offensive operation on these directions. This is it. And as soon as the Ukrainians redeploy their forces, I expect that the Russians will stop offensive operation and they will move to their basic positions in the vicinity of Pryutine. So this is the tactic. From one side, the Ukrainians try to penetrate the Russian defense belt. From the other side, the Russians try to force the Ukrainians to send some reserves, and they're trying to break their offensive operation. Now we're moving to the South Donetsk area, and today probably we got very interesting updates, details from the Ukrainian side. Let's increase the number of updates, let's say from the 1st of September. August, and as you can see, as we discussed many times, the Russians have complete superiority in this area, in Konstantinovka, Novomikhailivka, Ugledar, and so on. And we just have few videos from the area that the Russians used to attack the Ukrainian positions. And today, probably for the first time since the beginning of August, we received some videos from the Ukrainian side, how they were trying to implement some counter-artillery duels, trying to catch some initiative or to take initiative in their hands, and as a result of some strikes, they managed to damage few Russian artillery systems like D-30 howitzer, and to destroy another EMA and depot inside of the settlement by the name of Stepne. So we can't say that this is something important, but at least maybe the Ukrainians realize the situation on this combat line, that initiative is in complete Russian hands, and that they need to do something if they don't want to lose these two important settlements and to receive a strike in their back while they're trying to storm the Novodonetskaya and Novomayorskaya. Now we are moving further to Первомайska front line. Today we got updates of bombing and shelling of by the Russians of Ukrainian positions. We're using this video just to confirm the geolocations, because according to my map, these territories is under complete Russian control as a result of previous attacks. But now we see that for some reason the Russians left these positions, probably of Ukrainian counterattack. So before the next video I will update the map, and this territory will be colored in yellow as a part of Ukrainian control sector. Now we are moving further to Klishchevka Bakhmut area. Today we got also a lot of updates from this separate chat, and probably the most important ones is that the Ukrainians also brought some artillery systems to the combat line, trying to suppress the Russian forces, trying to complete the storm operation or prepare a final storm assault operation of Andreevka. One more time, the Ukrainians do have positions with low range and middle range artillery systems. When talking about long distances, the Ukrainians are using just HIMARS missiles because they can't use any other type of weapon, because they will be immediately discovered and destroyed by the Russian artillery system. So for these purposes, they can use just HIMARS, very expensive rockets, missiles. When talking about the long, middle range and low range distances, the Ukrainians can use just drones, because operators of drones is less probably is cheaper than to use artillery systems, and you can attack with drones. So we see every single front line show us that Ukrainians do have significant problems with middle and low-range artillery systems, and we see the Russians' complete superiority on these two distances. When talking about on long range, the Russians do have problems. When talking about FPV drones, as I understand, the situation is 50-50. Either the Russians and the Ukrainians are very good with this type of weapon, they try to develop themselves. It's very cheap, you don't need to have like a lot of special knowledges to use FPV drones. You just need to know the target and you need to have a drone and some kind of like electronic warfare equipment that can probably support your attack. Anyway, the Ukrainians during the previous night or day also made another attempt to storm Andriivka, but in the previous videos we saw the Ukrainians attempt to attack the Russian positions with infantry, and there was a lot of clashes along the railways. And those days, the Ukrainians made another attempt to attack using armored forces, tried to penetrate. Maybe that was some kind of attempt over the final rush. We see at least 4 tanks and 2 armored vehicles, but at some point all of them were destroyed or on the minefields or something like this. Anyway, the attack was repelled and the Ukrainians haven't managed to establish control over the settlement, and Andriivka still under complete and strong Russian control. Furthermore, the Russians continue attacking, bombing and shelling the Ukrainian positions on the line between Orekhovo, Vasilievka and Minkovka. And this is very important videos because the Russians just a few days ago or a day ago managed to repel the Ukrainian attack and to restore their positions in the forest in the vicinity of Zaliznyanskaya. They are not very strong yet there. They need time to dig in deeper, to secure the area, to restore and rebuild the fortifications and to get ready for another Ukrainian offensive operation. And based on the concentration of artillery Russian fire, as I understand, the Ukrainians are preparing another wave of attack, and soon, probably even maybe today or by the end of Monday, they will try to attack in direction of the Russian forces in Zaliznyansk one more time, and this attack might be the last because not many time passed since the previous attack, and the Russians basically haven't managed to dig in deeper, let's say, to restore their positions. When talking about Seversk bridgehead, today we got a very interesting video, very interesting detail, and to understand the situation, the Seversk bridgehead, we need to increase the number of updates and understand what is going on and who has the initiative and superiority in this direction. Before that, of course, we will show that the Russians during the previous days tried to suppress the Ukrainian artillery and to establish complete artillery superiority and artillery initiative, and the purpose of that situation was to prepare the foothold before upcoming events. And the question is, what kind of upcoming events the Russians were trying to create or to have in this direction. Before that, we need to increase the number of updates, let's say from the 1st of August. And when talking about this direction, we see complete superiority of Ukrainian drones and artillery forces in the vicinity of Lysychansk oil refinery. So it's not like this. We can't say that about the complete Ukrainian initiative. When talking about this front line, we can say that for some reason the Ukrainians were pretty concentrated in this direction, like Verkhnyakamyanka, Topolievka, on the oil refinery. The question is, what kind of purpose the Ukrainians wanted to achieve by this concentration of artillery and drone fire? And the answer is very simple. When talking about this oil refinery, we understand that this is like the best place where the Russians can hide significant number of forces in the underground facilities, infantry, armored vehicles, tanks, and the Ukrainians were trying to attack them. But the question is, what is the purpose of this number of forces? And today we got an answer to this question. Today the Ukrainians published the video video on how the Russians were trying to assault and storm the Ukrainian positions on the north of Verkhneykamyansk. Very interesting video, because the Russians were using just infantry, just like troopers, without support of any armored vehicles. They were trying to bypass the forest lines and to attack the Ukrainian positions from the north. You see like a group of Russian soldiers heading to the south. At some point they start to get some positions, waiting for an order, and after that they start running in direction of Ukrainian positions. And at some point the Ukrainians start bombing the Russians with artillery strikes. Then there's machine guns started to attack the Russian forces. Some soldiers, of course, probably were killed, but anyway, as a result of that attack, the Russians entered this forest, and this is like the base position for the Russians before the next waves of attacks in direction of Verkhneykamyansk. So the Russians bypassed this area, entered the forest, and currently try to develop their offensive operation further in direction of the settlement. So maybe the battle for Siversk also has started. We need more details. We will follow this situation because this is very interesting. During the previous months, we got just one video from this location, and this is it. How the Ukrainians were bombing the Russians also in the morning. Maybe this is not the first attempt from the Russian side to attack in this direction, but anyway, we see some concentration of activity in this direction, either from the Russian and from the Ukrainian side. So we'll see, because this is a very important operation. It might be the beginning of something very big in direction of Siversk. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.